In 1970, a man earning an average salary could save for a house in 4 years. By 2000, that same calculation had stretched to 9 years. Today, for a median American worker, buying that same house takes over 25 years of saving. Every single dollar. Nothing spent on food, travel, or rent. That is not a blip. That is not a market cycle. That is a structural collapse of the promise that hard work builds wealth. And the question everyone is asking, but very few are answering honestly, is why? Because the real answer is more complicated than Wall Street greed, more systemic than high interest rates, and more political than any single government wants to admit. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you will understand the full economics of the property crisis, the supply trap, the demand surge, the zoning wall, and the interest rate lock. Let us start at the beginning. The supply trap. Every market on earth runs on a simple rule. If demand rises and supply does not, prices go up. Housing is no different. But here is what makes housing uniquely dangerous. You cannot manufacture more land. The United States added roughly 3.8 to 4.4 million fewer homes than it needed over the past decade. To put that in perspective, that is enough missing houses to shelter the entire population of Australia twice. And this shortage did not happen by accident. It was built law by law over 50 years. In 1916, only 8 American cities had zoning ordinance. By 1936, over 1,200. This was called NIMBYism. And economists have measured its cost precisely. Research from Edward Glaser and Joseph Giorco at Harvard estimates that land use regulations add between $100,000 and $400,000 to the cost of a single home in high regulation cities compared to what that same home would cost if built freely. In cities like San Jose, California, 94% of residential land was zoned exclusively for single-family homes. You could not legally build a duplex. You could not build a small apartment. Only one house per lot. Forever. The construction cost wall. But even when builders want to build, a second wall stops them. The cost to construct a single home has risen roughly 30 to 40% since 2019 alone. Then there is the labour shortage. In 2006, the construction workforce stood at 7.7 million workers. By 2011, it had collapsed to 5.5 million done, gutted by the financial crisis. As of 2024, it still had not fully recovered. So builders face a choice: absorb the costs, charge buyers more, or simply stop building. Many are doing all three. The only way builders survive is to build smaller. The median size of a new American single-family home declined for the 3rd straight year in 2024. The American home is shrinking and getting more expensive. The demand explosion. Now add demand. Because while supply was being strangled, demand was being supercharged. The millennial generation, the largest in American history, at over 72 million people, hit peak home buying age right as the supply crisis peaked. This was not a coincidence. This was a demographic collision. At the same time, the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates to near zero during the pandemic. Suddenly, a mortgage that cost $2,000 a month at 4% cost only $1,500 at 2.5%. Buying became cheaper than ever, in monthly payment terms. Millions of buyers rushed into the market simultaneously. Prices surged. By early 2025, home prices were up 60% nationwide compared to 2019, 60% in 5 years. Then the Federal Reserve reversed course. To fight inflation, they raised rates from near zero in early 2022 to over 5% by late 2023. The fastest rate hike cycle in 40 years. Federal Reserve rate cycle data. Monthly mortgage payments on the median-priced American home reached $2,570 in 2024. To qualify, you need an annual income of at least $126,700. The median American household earns around $78,000 a year. The math simply does not work for most families. The lock-in trap. Here is where it gets worse. A mechanism economists call the lock-in effect is now freezing the entire market. Millions of existing homeowners bought or refinanced during the pandemic at rates below 3%. Their mortgage payment is half what a new buyer would pay for the same house today. They have no financial reason to sell. So they stay. The homes that should rotate into the market never appear. As of 2024, the number of homes for sale fell to some of the lowest levels in 30 years. Sellers who were priced out never arrived, and buyers competing over almost nothing drove prices further up. This is a trap with no natural exit. The very policy designed to save the economy, low interest rates, created a housing market that punishes everyone who was not already inside it. Today, 74.9% of American households, over 100 million families, cannot afford a median-priced new home. In San Jose, California, the minimum income needed to qualify for a median-priced new home is $437,963 per year. Per year. Most surgeons do not earn that. The myth of the corporate villain. Now, you have probably heard a different explanation. Wall Street, BlackRock, corporate landlords buying up all the homes. At the peak of corporate home buying in 2022, institutional investors accounted for less than 5% of all home purchases nationally. Their market share has since declined. Prices have not surged in cities with heavy institutional investment any more than cities without them, because the math does not work. 0.4% of supply cannot move a national market. The real culprit is structural, unglamorous, and politically inconvenient. We have not built enough homes for over a decade, and the people with the power to change that, to existing homeowners and the politicians they elect, have every incentive to keep it that way. This is global, and this is not only an American story. The International Monetary Fund tracked housing affordability across 40 countries over 50 years. In 2024, global housing affordability fell below the level seen during the 2008 financial crisis, worse than the bubble that broke the world economy. In the United States, the affordability index collapsed from 150 in 2021 to the mid-80s by 2024. In the United Kingdom, from 105 to the low 70s. Australia, Canada, Germany, Portugal, all the same story. By 2024, Harvard's research showed the national US price-to-income ratio reached 5.0. In the 1990s, it averaged 3.2. A generation ago, a house cost 3 years of household income. Today it costs 5. Over 2.8 billion people worldwide face some form of housing inadequacy, according to the United Nations. Housing is not just an investment asset that got expensive. It is a basic human need that is broken. Solutions. What actually works? So what does the evidence say actually works? First, supply reform. State governments in California, Massachusetts, New Zealand, and the Netherlands have begun overriding local zoning laws to force more housing construction near transit corridors. What has not worked? Subsidizing demand without fixing supply. First-time buyer grants, mortgage assistance programs. These put more money into buyers' hands chasing the same scarce homes. Prices absorb the subsidy and rise further. And the IMF is direct. Removing regulatory barriers is the first and most powerful lever. Without supply reform, no other intervention closes the gap. Outro and CTA. Here is the uncomfortable truth about the housing crisis. It is not the fault of one villain. It is the output of a system where the people who benefit from high prices, existing homeowners, their politicians, and anyone with a mortgage locked in at 2.8% borrow, outvote and outspend everyone who doesn't have a seat at the table yet. The economics are clear. The solution is clear. The missing ingredient is political will and enough public pressure to create it. If you understood something in this video that you didn't before, share it with one person who is struggling to afford housing. Because the more people understand the real mechanics of this crisis, the harder it becomes to ignore. Now, if you want to understand how the Federal Reserve's interest rate decisions actually work, and why they impact your mortgage more than any politician ever will,